Welcome to How to Turn Usage Reports into Budget Wins. Our session is being recorded so that people can do it later. I am your host, Kadzin, and I am a senior CSM at Absolute Security. And before that, I worked for a very large school district in Texas, so I definitely feel the pain that you guys feel. I know that districts are always having to do more with less. So our agenda today includes these reports that should help you unlock those targets. Device usage is just like it sounds. It shows how many minutes devices have been used along with login and lock information. The web usage is going to be websites that have been visited, and application usage is going to show the hours of use for applications that are actually installed on devices. It is a lot of information, so I'm just going to into the walkthrough. We are a small group, so if one of you wants to share your screen as I'm doing things to ask questions, that's fine. I'm just going to walk you through our demo console and you can follow along. And I will send the links for the help articles along with a recording in a day or two. Even though the Q&A is technically at the end, again, we're a small group, so feel free to just come off mute and ask your questions if you need to. So first up is device usage, but we're actually going to talk about how to enable all of these first. So first, you're going to need to come over to the policy groups to enable any of these features. So depending on the license type that you have or the permissions that you have for your role, you may all of these or see all of these, but you can always contact the system admin for your district if you need to request a change in permissions or have them make any of these changes. So you can see each policy group. Some of you may just have one policy group, some may have multiples depending on your environment, but for each policy group you would need to turn on the features that you want. So device usage, that first one we're going to talk about is right here in the middle. Just has a toggle bar here. So you would just toggle it on or off. The next one is application resilience. So since we are the only solution in the firmware of devices, we can self-heal our agent if it's removed, which means that we have an unbreakable digital tether to your Windows devices. So depending on your license types, we can report, repair, and reinstall certain applications and keep them on your devices as well. So if you just have the all you would see is the report feature. You can turn these on or off. You can create policies. So you would choose from the list of applications, and then you would put the minimum version that you're expecting to see. You can say, I want to report higher versions as compliance. There's signatures here, which you can update for your environment. You're going to put a semicolon between if you want to add any additional signatures. And then down here, depending on the app, some of them have report only, some are report and repair, some are report and reinstall only because they may not have the components to repair. Some are report, repair, and reinstall. If you ever have a question about what exactly it is repairing and reinstalling, you can always click the little question mark and it will take you straight to that particular application. In this case, it's Ivanti, and it will let you know this is what it's checking for the health checks. This is what it's going to do if it's repairing or reinstalling. And it will let you know if you need to, if you're doing the reinstall, if you need to prepare an MSI file or an EXE file, it'll let you know. Also, how you can pre-cache the installer on the device. So if you don't have contact with it, it can still reinstall that for you. And then you would just save and activate for the ones that you want to do. When it comes to reinstall, you will need to upload an installer, or you can host your own installer on something like Dropbox or Google Drive, that kind of thing. Just wanted to briefly touch on that. We're not going to go into detail on that one today because it is a little more complex. And then below application resilience is the installed applications. So in order to see usage data for applications, you're first going to need to turn on installed applications, which will just show the ones that are actually installed on devices. And then if you want the usage data, like how many minutes it's being used, you would include the little checkbox right here. We also have required applications, which you can configure either here or under the applications section to look at over here. And those application resilience policies are also here. You can see the ones that are active or inactive. You can click create policy and you've got the choice between the resilient, which is the one that repairs and reinstalls, or just required. If there's something unique to your environment that's not included in the resilient apps, it'll look at the ones that are actually installed on your devices, so you can choose from those. So you can say like Microsoft and it'll show you all the applications that are under Microsoft here. So you can see, Microsoft App Installer, the BitLocker, all the different things under Microsoft here. And then once you pick one, we'll just say alarms and clock. You can say, I want to require a version between 2 and 8, or anything less than 8, or anything more than 8, and set those parameters up there. It will, again, look at what's actually installed on your devices. So it will give you a choice of this particular application, and you can say, I want anything greater than 1.0.38, for example. The next step would be the authenticity. It's going to check the signatures as part of compliance. You can choose if there's no signatures found, we don't care, we're going to move on with life. Or you can say, nope, we need to have at least one valid signature. Maybe there's 3 different signatures for this particular application. We just need one at least to be considered compliant. And then down here, you would select your policy groups that you want it to apply to. You could do all or none of them, and then you would save and activate. Or if you're walking along right now and you just want to save whatever you're doing, but not activate it, you can save it and come back to it later. And then back to policy group, we have web usage right below there. So that's the other one that we're going to be talking about today. And then once you turn everything on, you are going to need to give it a few days for devices to check in and give you some good data. So first up, we're going to talk about device usage. If you come to the devices page, you can click on a single device, and that will give you individual device usage. You have all the little sub tabs here across the middle. You're going to click on usage, and this is something that is uploaded at midnight for the local device time. So you're not going to see today's data in this section, just anything from yesterday and before. You can export the data here. For an individual device, you can do 30, 60, 90, or 365 days. You can also choose the format if you want XML or CSV, but it defaults to Excel. You can export that usage for the particular device that you're in when you select one. Also, if you open these little tabs, you can see the types of activity. They're going to be in that export. So you'll see, logins, shutdowns, logouts, etc. So if you forget the typing on the operating system, it'll be different things. You can always come to the question mark up here in the top right and do help for this page, and it will show you sleep, wake, shutdown, the different types for the different values there. And for Windows and Mac, device usage is determined if the device is unlocked. So if the screensaver is showing or it's been locked or shut down, it's not going to count that data. A Chromebook is deemed to be in use if the display is active, not dimmed. So also not when sleeping, locked, or shut down. And we have some pre-made reports here. So if you just search for usage at the top, I think is the easiest way to find it. We've got device usage, and this is broken down by average daily use that allows you to see maybe if devices need reallocation, right? So you can see the heavily used, moderately used. So heavily used if it's more than 8 hours, moderate is 4 to 8 hours, lightly used is going to be 1 to 4 hours, and not used is less than an hour on average. You can also see the average daily use here, which if you expand this, you can see is in the format of hours and minutes. And something to note about this is it is averaged over the 30 days prior to the most recent agent check-in, and any days that show no data are going to be excluded from the calculation. So say your students are only using those devices between Monday and Friday, it's only going to count those days in the 30-day average. It's not going to count like any Saturdays and Sundays where they may have it turned off. We also have the device analytics, which is a little more complex. This is from our older environment. So you can click on usage report here, and you can say middle school activity if you wanted to see the middle school activity, for example. Now you would need to create device groups for this ahead of time so that you could see the differences, but we have several ways to do that. We do have a video on how to create device groups, or I'll send the help entry over with everything after the call. So here, if you wanted to do it by specific device groups, you would choose the device groups that you want to see. So like in this case, I have an example of staff and students, but you could do, all the middle schools, all the high schools, or you could have one group for, each individual high school and compare those. And then you would click next. You can choose if you want to see the last month, the last 3 months, the last 6 months, or the last 12 months. And then you can choose login and unlock activity or device activity overall. And then you could do filters too if you only wanted to include specific things. And then you would create the report. And then it may take just a couple of minutes. I know a lot of you have hundreds of thousands of devices, so that might take a little bit longer. But then it gives you kind of a cute little each individual device group. So again, if you wanted that to be particular high schools or whatever, you could see that. You can do the count of devices with events, the device activity, or the login and unlock. To me, it's of limited use. It was something, like I say, from our older console before we had some more granular reporting available. And it looks like Danielle is writing a question. You can come off mute if you want to, Danielle.
Sure. Are there export options available for reports generated this way?
Yes, so you would just click export here.
Could that be done on a schedule like email or SFTP, or is it just a one-time download?
Unfortunately, on this one, it's just the one-time download.
Okay, thank you.
So that is it on those. And then, of course, you can do any custom report like you can for anything else. You'll just come to one of the device pages. So you can come to all devices, your missing devices, or those that are reported stolen. And you can do this from any of those. So you're going to, come filter by whatever columns you want to see. So maybe you want to see, I don't know, warranty end date. That's something that a lot of people like to see. So you can see the field here for warranty end date, and then your filters you would do as usual also. So maybe you want to see a warranty end date is earlier than or equal to today's date. Apply. And so you can then see all of those. So if you wanted to say it is the end of the warranty and you want to see if these devices are still being used, so then you would come up here to export usage. And then again, you can choose your Excel. And for multiple devices, it only goes to the last 30 days at max, just because it is a whole lot of data. Hundreds of thousands of devices. Again, that would strain the limits of the Excel there. So you can choose up to 30 days for all your devices and then export it. And on this, if you do have a bunch of devices, it will only do a 1,000 at a time. And if it's doing more than 2,000 devices, it may just take a few minutes to complete. But you can see here, it has the identifier, the device name, the date and timestamp, and then you'll see like 2 minutes of usage activity, 96 minutes of usage activity. And then within that same device, it's got the logout, sleep, unlock, wake time, the SSID, someone was logged into our absolute guest network, your local IP and local IP feed address, and the username is going to be here at the end. So then once you have that, you can filter it as needed. And as you were talking about scheduling device reports before, so if we did save this as a report, which would be here, and we'll say, I don't know, warranty end date or whatever you want to call your report, whatever you're looking at, you can also share with everyone. Once you save it as a report, can schedule by hitting the calendar here. And you can say, I want to see this. If you're doing the 30 days, you can schedule it for a monthly. You can say the last day of every month at 3 a.m. I want this report to come out in Excel and include the device usage details. So then you would share with whatever users are in the console, or you can just type an email address here at, example at yourdistrict.com and hit enter, and then it would add them to the report. So they don't have to have access to the console in order to get this report. And the other thing is if it's more than 5,000 devices, if you schedule it, it will show all of those. And then depending on the device's operating system, power settings, activity type, and the method used to power off the device, some information may not be available. So if that happens, the field is empty when you export the data. And then finally, here on the dashboards, we have a device usage, which can be really handy as well. So you can find this under the asset management dashboard, or you can create your own dashboard if there's different things you want to look at across the different types here. So in this case, we're looking at device usage. So you would click create a widget, and then you have the device usage here. So you can select that, and then you can say, I want to see the last week, the last 30, 60, 90 days, or you can select a time period of up to a year ago. So we could say, what is this, January 15th to January 15th, and then it breaks it down further by monthly. Once that populates, you can choose the different bar types here. It's being a little slow because that's a lot of data. Come on, there we go. All right, so you can see this is average usage, but you can also do total. You can also edit your filters here. So maybe you only want to see the platform type is Chromebooks. Maybe you want to see device usage during Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So maybe you only want to see weekdays, and you only want to see when the hours of the day are between, we'll say 7 a.m. and this is military time, so it would be 3 p.m. would be 15, and then apply. And currently it's on the device group, so it'll show the usage for that device group, but I will change it to weekly so you can see a smaller subset, and it won't take this long to load. And you can refresh that. It will load eventually, but I'm just going to do the last 90 days so you can see that. It's a little quicker. Why are you showing me no data? Oh, it's probably because of the Chrome. Let me take that one out. We only have a couple of Chromebooks in our demo environment, and they may not have been turned on recently. So there we go. All right. So you can see the average time in use over Monday is 6 hours, over Tuesday is 5 hours and 34 minutes. You can add it to your dashboard. Like I say, it depends on what you're wanting to see. We've filtered to these days of the week. You could also do it by, the device name or the username if you wanted to see how often users are using these during particular times. The maximum number of bars here is 20. So you can select that. You can also group the remaining values as others. So if you check that box, it would do the top 19 under your filters, and then it would group that 20th one as other. And then you can further group these by maybe your device group if you wanted to do it by, particular schools or whatever. You could also do device group up here and do different fields. Like I say, you can do total time instead of average time if you'd rather see that. And then you would just add it to your dashboard. Oh, before you do that, I would give it a different name and say weekday device usage in this instance and add to your dashboard. Okay. And you can tweak the filters here. You can tweak the time here. You can say, I want to see it least to most or most to least. You can export it, and then you can also go back to the settings. Or if you're like, oh yes, I like the settings on this widget, I want to duplicate it and then change it to weekend usage. You could do that where all the other filters are already in place. Also, if you wanted to look at this before you wanted to look at these other ones, you can drag it up and look for it there. And if you decide, hey, I don't need to look at this anymore, you can just remove the widget and it won't show up anymore. So the second thing we're going to talk about is the web, and that's going to be the websites that have been visited. There's no individual reports on this one. We just have group reports for this and the widgets here. So for the group reports, you can see if you type web that we have 3 different web usage reports. The first one we'll talk about is the last 7-day report. And this one just gives you an average over the last 7 days. Again, taking out the ones where it's not used. So you can see canva.com is one of our top ones, and you can see one of the 3 devices that has this feature turned on is using Canva. You can see the categories here, so you could sort by adult themes. You could sort by VPNs and proxies is another one. These are not categories that we decide. These are determined by a third-party vendor that we just use for that. But again, you can hit help and see the different categories. If you wanted to sort any of these reports by category, you could do that. Also, if you want to see the individual devices that are using Canva, for example, you could click on the 33% and then it would show you all the information, device name, and the total weekly usage averages 21 minutes. In the daytime is 11 minutes. Evening and weekend is 10 minutes. And again, if you forget about any of the fields, just click the help for this page and it will remind you of each kind. If you wanted to go into the particular report, it will give you more information there. Okay. So if we get out of that, and once you are, if you go to the Canva, if you click on the Canva one, it's going to show you each of the individual URLs that were accessed for that in case you need that. But I think the better usage report is this one. So if you wanted to save this as a report and always have one on Canva, you could do that and just say, this is my Canva users report and save that. Now, if you click share with everyone, that will show up for anyone that's using the Absolute Console that has permissions to view reports. And then for the other reports, we've got web usage trending. And this one's really helpful for getting a handle on things that your web filters might be missing. So it's like kind of like hashtags on any of your social media. It shows the trending things like it looks at the last week and bases it on anything that's got the biggest jump from the last 30 days. So in the last week, if 30 days ago, 200 something, and in the last week, 2,000 users are looking at it, then it will, or 0 from 30 days before, and now suddenly everyone's looking at it. It will show those top sites that people are accessing, and that can be a great way to see things that are bypassing your web filter that maybe it's missing. So that's a good one to schedule and kind of look at weekly to make sure your web filters are in order. And the last one is the web subscriptions. And this is a good one for those ROI reports. So this looks at the ones that you have installed and you can set it up here. So manage subscriptions. If you've never done it before, you'll see add subscriptions. You can enter the start of your school year or fiscal year. I know it is July 1st for a lot of school districts. So you can just say, we want to look at our fiscal year and how much this is being used. Add a website, it's only going to give you the ones that are actually installed on your devices. So you can start typing. So if you wanted to look at Canva, it's going to pull up the ones for Canva. But it does that just so you don't accidentally make a mistake about the website that you're choosing, because sometimes, it'll have some weird character in there, or it's not just, canva.com. It could be your particular instance. So it will show you all the options there. And you can say, hey, this is a free subscription, like we don't have any licenses, or you can say per user, we're paying $5 per user for this license, or it's a site license. And you can say we've got one license for 100,000 users and fill those in that way. So you would just apply and then it would fill these in. Sometimes you don't see anything right away because it does have to, reach back, but you can come back and see that report as devices check in. So this lets you see that you've got the value of your unused licenses. In this case is $186.30. Probably it would be more because you guys will have more devices in here than we do, but it lets you see if you're actually getting use out of Canva or the different things that you may be having web subscriptions for. And then of course, if we go back to dashboards, you can see a couple of these are the more popular ones that my customers have wanted. So the AI chatbots, maybe you want to see if your students are using AI. If they're going to those websites, then you want to see that. In the settings here, you would choose web usage. You're going to have the bars be the website. The maximum is 20, and you can see the different ones here. And then you could group it by school if you wanted to, or different things there. We've got, again, the average time and focus. You could also say the total time in focus, whatever it is that you're wanting to look at. And then you would add this to your dashboard. Again, don't forget to change the title to something like AI chatbots, but you could look at this for the whole school year again, or the last 30, 60, 90 days, or the last week, whatever you're wanting to look at, and add that to your dashboard. And again, you can export this at will. And then same with VPNs and proxies. I know a lot of school districts have issues with students trying to bypass your web filters. So for this one, again, the settings are going to be web usage and website. And then in this case, I have a whole year's worth of usage there. And then you can do website categories contain the word proxies, because that is, I don't remember what the exact category is. If you want the exact category, you can go to that help entry I was looking at before. I think it's called VPN and web proxies, but I know the word proxies is in there. So you can just say the website categories contains proxies, or the website name itself, the URL contains VPN is a good one. These are popular ones from years past that I've heard people having issues with. Surfshark, CyberGhost, TunnelBear, Mullvad, Private Internet, Brave, Browser, Hotspot, Shield are kind of generic ones that come up. Shield and Hotspot and Browser won't always be VPNs and proxies, but at least it lets you look at it and evaluate them, because a lot of times they do. And you're probably familiar in your environment with others that you're used to seeing. So this is a way that you can see those VPNs and proxies. I've got the total time and focus here. Any questions on the web usage reports? And we'll do application usage as the last one. Okay. Awesome. So application usage is similar to web usage, except it's only going to show which applications are installed. We were talking about before the requirements. So if you wanted to see the required applications, you can do reports from here. So there is the summary of applications here, and you can see all the things that are installed. And you could, of course, filter by a particular application that you want to see. Or if you have added your application resilience or the application compliance, you can come here. You could just filter by the status details. You could either say the file's not signed, or you could choose the different status details here, or you could just say status is non-compliant or missing. Maybe you want to see those for the particular applications. So you can see Zscaler, Trellix here. We don't have those. I just did it as an example, but you can see Spotify. You can also do the policy type. Instead of doing your resilient ones, you can just say, I just want to look at the ones I've required. In this case, we have like Spotify, just to see an example, and like Google Chrome, and based on the version, it's saying it's not installed. Again, you can save this as a report, and you can say the application name is Spotify. And then you can, save this as a report and say non-compliant Spotify or whatever. And you can, again, schedule that to run every X amount of time. On the individual device, it is also going to be just what's installed. You can see that under here, under the Applications tab. So if you were, working on a desktop remotely, you could see all the apps that are on that particular one. Or you can come to reports, and if you search application, again, you can see the compliance here, the resilience here, or installed applications here, and then you can filter down from there. So undesired applications, that's another report that you could make to say, I don't want anything that's got BitTorrent or the word torrent, for example, Netflix, Zoom. You could say, I don't want these on my student devices, and you can save as a report and schedule that as well. And then we've got the widgets for installed applications as well. Oh, clicked on the wrong one, sorry. So here I've got some examples. So like maybe you want to see the installed versions of Adobe that you have, or Creative Cloud, because those licenses are expensive. So you want to say, okay, yeah, like people are using Adobe, but like it's installed on their device, but are they actually using it? So the hours of use for those, or the hours of use for like Teams in this case. You could say application name is, and say it specifically, or you could do contains Teams or contains Microsoft, whatever the application is that you're looking for. If you're not sure, I would just come over here to the installed applications and you can look and see what the exact name is and go from there. That would be my best recommendation there. So yeah, if you look at the settings on this one, it's going by application name, and then we have the filter for Microsoft Teams, but you could also say, I want to know, maybe the device name. So this has a year's worth, so it might take a minute. So yeah, you can see there's 2 devices here that have used it. I have this set to total time in focus, but again, you could do average depending on what you're looking for. And then you can see the total is about 3.5 hours for this, and for this Dell, it's less than a minute. So I guess they just clicked on it briefly and didn't really use it. Okay, and then for this one, for the Adobe, currently this is just whether it's installed or not, but you could also do application usage for that as well. So in this case, application name contains, we'll say Adobe. And for the last 90 days, there's none. So let's look at, let me go back a year, January 15th to January 15th. And again, this is the daily average for the days where it's actually used. So it's not going to average in those 0 use days like a Saturday or Sunday, or if someone's on vacation or gone or whatever, if they're not using it at that time, it's not going to average that. Interesting. All right. So you probably have better examples in your own environment. Okay. What questions do you guys have? Are there any use cases that you want to see your ROI for that maybe we haven't covered today?
I personally don't. Thank you for showing all that. That's typically how I use it for my day to day. So thank you for going through all of that.
Excellent. Of course. All right. Well, then I can let you guys go, and I will send the recording over in a couple of days along with all the assets that we talked about today. Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.